morning, boys and girls. It is June 2nd, and my Bible lesson today is called the Tattletale Tongue. If your brother sin, go and reprove him in private. Matthew 18:15. Reprove means speak to him and try to correct him and help him to know what the right thing to do is. So what's a tattletale? Tattletale is telling on someone else when you really don't have to. It's okay to tell on someone else if they're doing something that they could get hurt or that they could hurt somebody else with. That's okay because you're there to protect them and help them. Okay, let's see what this story is all about. I'm curious. Ooh, I see little school desks, don't you? And I see a bell. I have a feeling it's about school. Tilly teacher stood on the steps of the schoolhouse and rang the bell to call the mice children into school. They trooped in noisily, carrying books and lunch buckets, laughing and talking together. Soon they were settled at their desk as Miss Tilly called out each name, just like I used to call out each name and say good morning. Mandy Mouse, said Miss Tilly. Here, said Mandy. Freddie Mouse, continued Miss Tilly. Here, answered Freddie. Said Church Mouse, said Miss Tilly. There was no answer. Miss Tilly looked up in surprise as Freddie explained. Said and Ted aren't here, Miss Tilly. Why, that's unusual, said Miss Tilly. I've never known the mice boys to miss school. I wonder. Just then the door burst open and Said and Ted ran in, dropping their books and homework papers. Good morning, Miss Tilly. Ted gasped, scrambling on the floor to pick up some papers. I'm sorry we're late. We had a problem at home, explained Said, helping Ted pick up some books. Well, sometimes things do happen, soothed Miss Tilly. I hope it wasn't a serious problem. Well, I guess it is serious. You see, my mother's gold pen has been lost, and she's awful upset. Ever since we got up this morning, we've been looking for it. Oh, my, exclaimed Miss Tilly. I'm sure Aunt Snooty is very sad. I know how much that pen meant to her. I believe her father got it from a very wealthy home where he lived. What do you think could have happened to it, boys? Said and Ted looked very ashamed as Ted answered in a low voice. She thinks it was stolen by one of the young mice. Stolen? Well, I'm sure none of our mice would do such a thing, Miss Tilly thought a moment. And just to prove it, we're going to clean this classroom. I want all of you to search your desk. Put everything out on top so I may see. They need a good cleaning anyway. And I will clean my desk. So they're all going to clean their desks. Soon there was a lot of talking in the room. Hey, look what I found, cried Freddie Field Mice. Last week's homework assignment. I thought I lost it. And he waved a bent-up piece of paper. Oh, yuck, groaned Christopher Churchmouse in disgust, pulling out a moldy, half-eaten sandwich from his desk. Look at this. Chris, nice lunch you've got there, snickered one of the mice boys. Have a bite, Christopher laughed, waving it towards the boy's nose. I found my book that I lost last month, cried Mandy Mouse. The mice cleaned and searched for the pen nearly all day. At last, it was time to go home. Well, I guess they got their room clean, didn't they? They have a really big desk. Lots of books. Soon there was a lot of talking in the room. Hey, look what I found. Oh, I did that. It was time to go home. Whew, muttered Freddie Fieldmouse to Christopher. That was some day. I'm exhausted. Me too, said Christopher. Then he laughed and wiped off a big smudge of Freddie's face. It looks like you're wearing half the dirt home. And that happens when you clean sometimes. When Christopher got home, Mama had her favorite cookies, his favorite cookies waiting. He sat down and told her all about his day. That's too bad, said Mama, sympathetically sitting down at the table with Christopher. I was with Aunt Snooty this afternoon trying to help her think of all the places that she could have left the pen herself. Well, I think it's terrible, fussed Christopher, taking a big bite of his second cookie. What's terrible, Christopher? The way Aunt Snooty is accusing all of us mice of stealing her pen. Who would want her old pen anyway? I'll bet it's not even gold. Christopher, it's very important to Aunt Snooty, whatever it's made of. Yes, Mama. And what kind of cookies do you think those are? I think chocolate chip cookies. Okay. That evening, Christopher went to Ced's home to play. They were all settled upstairs playing checkers when Uncle Rudy called Ced. Coming, Ced called back. He looked at Christopher. I'll be right back. Don't you cheat while I'm gone. I won't, laughed Christopher, and he watched Ced run down the stairs. Then he looked around the room. Maybe I should look for Aunt Snooty's pen here. While I'm waiting, he walked stealthily over to Ced's desk. There's nothing wrong with just poking around to see what I can find. He looked over his shoulder to make sure Ced wasn't coming back yet, then turned over a couple papers that were on his desk. He's not cheating in the game, is he? But I see a pile of papers right there. What? There was Aunt Snooty's gold pen. Christopher picked it up and then dropped it as if it was a hot coal. Didn't Ced know the pen was there? He must know. Oh my, Christopher thought. Ced must have stolen his own mother's pen. He usually needs a pen. He's always losing his. Suddenly he heard Ced starting up the stairs. Christopher pushed the papers back over the pen and sat down before the checkerboard. Did you cheat? asked Ced. I told you I wouldn't, answered Christopher, giving Ced a long, hard look. Could Ced actually have stolen his own mother's pen? The next day, Christopher was walking to school with his friend Freddie Fieldmouse. I sure hope today's a better day than yesterday, said Freddie. It will be. We won't have to look for that old pen anymore, said Christopher. He continued softly, Freddie, I've got a secret to tell you, but you've got to promise not to tell anybody. I promise. I could get in big trouble if you tell. Giving a look in both directions to be sure no one was listening, Christopher whispered into Freddie's ear. What? Shrieked Freddie excitedly. What do you think Christopher told Freddie? That Ced stole his mother's gold pen? You think that's what he said? Shh! Hissed Christopher in alarm. Someone will hear us and wonder what we're talking about. Are you sure he stole it? Well, I saw it on his desk. At recess that day, Christopher and a couple of his other friends were playing together when Mandy Mouse came over to join them. She was carrying a small bag of candy. What do you have in there, Mandy? Christopher asked with interest. Some candy. May I have a piece, please? Begged Christopher. What do you think he's going to do? I have two more, Mandy said reluctantly. I'll tell you a secret if you give me a piece, promised Christopher. Is it a good secret? Oh, yes. I know who stole Aunt Snooty's pen. Mandy's eyes got big and round, and she handed Christopher a piece of candy as she listened. Whoever would think that, she exclaimed. Think what? Questioned a cute little mouse coming up behind Mandy. Oh, can't tell you, said Mandy smugly. It's a secret. See that you don't, warned Christopher as he joined the mice boys. What is Christopher doing? He is going around and telling everybody that Ced stole the pen. Is that the truth? We don't know. Let's find out. The next day at school, the little mice were in an uproar. It seemed all the mice knew Ced had stolen his mother's pen and were standing around talking about it. Whenever Ced came near, they stopped. At lunchtime, Ced went home and did not come back. Several of the mice children in the yard began to tease his brother Ted. Hey, Ted, where's your big brother? Gone out to steal something else? You all be quiet, screamed Ted. My brother's not a thief. Christopher and Freddie watched Ted out of the window. I'm sorry for him, said Chris. Yes, I am too. It must be really hard when your own brother does something like that. Is it true? We don't know. That evening, Christopher was doing his homework when Aunt Snooty bustled in to see Mama. I just had to stop by and tell you that I found my gold pen, cried Aunt Snooty with excitement. Why, that's wonderful, said Mamma. Wherever did you find it? Well, I remembered I was helping Ced with his homework in his room. I looked, and there it was under some papers on his desk, just where I had left it. I'm sorry I caused you any trouble, gushed Aunt Snooty on her way out. You know my father gave it to me. Christopher sat frozen in horror as he watched Aunt Snooty leave. Aunt Snooty has found her pen, Christopher, said Papa. Did you hear that? And did Ted steal the pen? Or said no? Yes, I heard, said Christopher with a sickly tone. Isn't that wonderful? Enthused Mamma. Yes, really wonderful, Christopher murmured in a flat voice, and he trudged to his room. How do you think Christopher feels now? Not so good. The whole school would know tomorrow he had misjudged his cousin and told the mice that Ced was a thief. Christopher laid his head down on the desk and cried. Why, son, is your homework that hard? Asked Papa from the doorway. No, he sobbed. Oh, Papa, I've done a terrible bad thing. And he explained it all to him. Just then a knock came at the door. Papa went to answer. Christopher peeked from his room. Good evening, Uncle Rudy. Won't you come in? What can I do for you? Well, I'm not sure, Uncle Rudy, in a very stern voice, said. My boys tell me that Christopher has been spreading lies in school, that Ced is a thief. Now, what can Christopher do to make this right? I understand that Ced was so hurt and embarrassed he couldn't even go back to school after lunch. Yes, Chris was just telling me what happened. May I say how sorry I am? I will make sure Christopher makes it right at school. Very well, said Uncle Rudy in a strained voice, shaking Papa's paw. When the door closed, Papa motioned Christopher into the living room. But Papa, I didn't tell the whole school. I just told Freddie and Mandy, and I told them not to tell. Sit down beside me and let's talk, said Papa, patting the sofa behind him. Do you remember the verse the children's Sunday school teacher was teaching the other day about the tongue? I guess I don't, admitted Christopher. She said the Bible verse, James 3:5. The tongue is a small part of our body, but it makes great boasts. Our tongues are small, said Christopher, trying to stick his tongue out far enough to see it. Yes, that's right, agreed Papa. The tongue is small, but the verse says it makes great boasts. That means it can cause a lot of hurt and pain. And I think we've seen that tonight, just how much harm it can cause, haven't we? And there's Papa talking to Christopher. Christopher looked at Papa with big tearful eyes and nodded his head. Oh, yes, Papa, I'm so sorry. Papa wiped a tear from Christopher's cheek and said, if we can't say something nice about someone, we probably shouldn't say anything at all. Have you heard Mrs. Rowley say that? The Bible also says that when we have a problem with someone, we should go first to them and talk about it. If you had gone to Ced and asked him about the pen, this would have never happened. I know, Papa, said the sad little mouse. Chris, let's go to Ced's home tonight so you can ask for forgiveness. Then tomorrow you must go to school and tell the whole class what you have done and how sorry you are. This is the only way to make it right. Oh, Papa, that will be very hard, said Christopher. I know it will, son, but that is using your tongue the right way. And Christopher learned that night how to use his tongue. It was a lesson he would never forget. And there it is, Papa and Christopher. He loves his Papa. And do you think he went to school the next day and made everything right? I think he did. He learned his lesson. Lord Jesus, help us to use our tongue for the right thing, to be kind and caring with our words, and appreciative, and not to say things that are unkind and not to lie. Lord, bless each of these boys and girls. Help them to learn this lesson. Help us to always be careful what we say, to think before we speak. And Lord, bless our mommies and our daddies and our brothers and our sisters and our dogs and our cats and our pets. And just give everybody a super awesome, great day. In Jesus' name.